Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop. Today I'm here with Kathy Pedrayas. And I love when I ask people how to pronounce their names because sometimes they get this like, well, whatever. Yeah, that's fine. And then that's not really how they pronounce it.
Yeah.
We want to pronounce it correctly as best as we can. So Kathy Pedrayas, we're so happy to have you here today. You are known as TikTok's mom friend, and you have 2.4 million followers who tune in to listen to your life safety hacks. And I've become one of those. I've watched a whole ton of them, and you really have a voice that I can see why it resonates. It's quick, it's got solutions, and anyway, so you now have a book. Do you have
I
a copy?
do.
Oh, you have it behind you. The Mom Friend Guide to Everyday Safety and Security. And when did that come out?
Just in April, so very recently.
So congratulations. I hope it's going well.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about how did you enter into this space as a security and safety expert?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is it took a little bit of a couple turns, but I used to be an environmental scientist, which was my job was safety related because what I used to do was inspect properties to make sure they were safe to be inhabited. I would inspect them for mold and lead and groundwater contamination and soil contamination and what kinds of things could be leaching into the building because of what's in the ground. So that was like from a hazard perspective, like a very real hazard perspective. And then I started working in television a few years later, and suddenly I was in 100 million homes. I was a host on QVC, and at the time they had 100 million homes of distribution. And so that's when I started thinking about some cyber stuff because, in 100 million people, there's going to be maybe one or two who are not the best. So I started thinking about, well, what are ways to protect myself? Because I was talking to colleagues and every single person I knew had more than one horror story. So that's when I started getting involved in cybersecurity and how to protect my data that way.
So it became relevant to your life, and then you took it to that next step and went on TikTok, which
yeah, a little bit of a step later. I got some training at QVC as well, and then when I left, I started posting things on social media. Initially, it was just trends and posting things that everybody posts, but slowly but surely, like through posting and through what my comments were, I discovered this safety and security niche, and I realized I do have a unique perspective on this.
Yeah, so 2.4 million people think that that's true, that you're offering them something really unique. So I'm wondering if, do you have a favorite TikTok that you've posted that you want to share with us right now?
Yeah, I think my favorite is a series, but it's called Situations When It's Best to Lie. And oddly enough, it was inspired by just a very mundane moment at the grocery store. I was at the grocery store and some guy was recommending restaurants, the cashier, and in recommending his restaurants, he goes, "Oh, well, where do you live?" And it took me back to my training from QVC and all of this, where I was told, sometimes you'll meet people on the street that are going to ask you these kinds of like innocent questions, but you don't really want to answer them very truthfully, So I was like, oh, I'm just down the road, which is one of my go-to vague, quick responses. And so Situations When It's Best to Lie addresses these kinds of innocent questions that, maybe they are completely innocent, but they can still be opening that door into your personal information without realizing it. So it gives you just like these easy go-to little white lies that help you get out of the question without, being confrontational.
So one of them is, where do you live? And you say, not far from here. That's great. Any
or
other common questions that you feel like it's good to have an answer to?
Yes, there's some specifically when traveling, like, is this your first time visiting, or are you staying at this hotel, or is this your first time in town? Are you traveling alone? These kinds of questions. Anything that asks you, are you traveling alone? Or are you alone? Do you live in the building? If you're walking your dog outside and, maybe you get approached with, oh, you live here, or, that kind of thing. So I have questions for that, like, no, I'm just visiting a friend, or no, I've been here plenty of times, or no, I'm not traveling alone. I'm meeting up with some friends right now. Just these little go-to lies.
Yeah, but safety lies. So they're important. We should probably come up with like a different word than lies when we're talking to our kids, because it's really workarounds, like when you get caught off guard. So I'm wondering if like you think it's a good idea to have these conversations in advance with our teenagers so that they can default to like, oh, where do I live? Right around here.
Right. And I would say definitely have those conversations, not just for, the types of questions that you might come across in person, but teens are going to come across a lot of that through their social media when they're chatting with people they don't know, honestly, because that's what they all do on Snapchat, on Instagram, on TikTok, and they start building a relationship where they start direct messaging each other. And that person is going to want to know things like, oh, do you go to school and stuff like that? And you can answer in a vague way, like, yes, I go to school, but you don't have to say, yes, I'm in high school, I'm in 7th grade at this place. You don't have to do that. So I would definitely have those conversations of like, what's an okay conversation to have with strangers online and what's not an okay, or what, when to put up that wall. Like, I don't want to answer these kinds of questions.
Okay. And give us the ammunition of why it's a bad idea to do that, because we do seem like we're in a time where privacy is kind of gone. Like, where people have rings for their doorbells and Amazon has all of our information and social media. So to my kids, they feel like privacy is dead. So
Yeah.
why that next level of like saying, okay, so they have a lot of our information, but you don't need to go further.
Right. Well, a lot of times some of that information is available through, databases that have been hacked, and then it becomes like publicly available through a breach. It was unencrypted, something like that. But just because it's online doesn't mean it's not always the most accurate, right? It could be like outdated information. When you're having these conversations, you're confirming stuff and you're giving more relevant, truthful information from in the moment. I do believe that privacy is not completely dead yet. I think we're having these conversations now and there's still hope. In terms of big data, it's what big data does with all of these smart devices and stuff like that is very different than me saying, oh, hey, this is my address, let me post it on the internet, right? Like, it's like a different situation, although they can be related. But when you're talking to strangers on the internet about this kind of stuff, it's not just about scam artists and hackers and things, because they do use that information as well, but it's about, predators. And it's easy for kids to talk to anybody online. And so they really have to be armed with what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And it has to be an ongoing conversation because they'll forget.
So this isn't like, I think about this all the time because we feel like there's so much access to everything about me, about you. When I was a kid, there was a phone book that showed up at my house where you could look me up and find my phone number and my address. And yet we tell our kids, don't share your phone number with anybody online. So what's the damage of sharing, of a innocent kid just saying, here's my phone number?
Well, the problem is that going back to these databases, which by the way includes like whitepages.com, you could go there and actually have them remove your listing so that you're not, publicly searchable that way. But your phone number is tied to your email addresses, your all of your social media accounts. If you're using that same phone number for my rewards program at the grocery store, at the store, I'm using it for my bank, I'm using it to access my Instagram, I'm using it to all of these things. Suddenly that one number is a key to everything else. And then when I type that one number online, if you're still on white pages and these kinds of people finding services and apps, websites, there's a lot of them, then now I can find your relatives, I can find email, I can find street address. Actually, a really good example of this is somebody did find my number online through one of these people finder websites. And I do go through and I audit them and I clean them out, and I actually pay for a service that's supposed to help me do the same thing, but it's not perfect. So somebody did find my number through one of these services and text me something very innocent. What do you want for Christmas? But very creepy, right? Because this is not somebody I know. This is somebody from the world. And I got that message to my phone, but I was very easily able to reverse look up that number. I found out who the man was, where he lived, who his parents were, everything. And I handed out all that information to the police when I filed my report that, this person was not somebody I wanted to be having communication with. But all I needed was a phone number to do that.
Well, is that enough for the police to care?
Well, them caring, no, but at least at least there's like some kind of record. So that way, if something, escalate, a lot of times these little messages to the phone and stuff, they're innocent. They're not innocent. They're creepy, but they're not necessarily going to escalate into something physical. but I just like to have a record that way in case it does become a problem, somebody starts showing up at my house or something like that, that I could say, listen, I have a history, here it is, so that's why I did it. But no, nothing is coming of it.
So for a teenager, it seems to me like if I share my phone number over here, either in person or online, that I've now exposed every part of me, because likely my phone number is tied to my Instagram account, my TikTok account, and now they've linked. If they saw me outside of my house, they can put all the pieces together that we didn't used to be able to do with just a phone number.
Very, very easily. So what I just had this conversation with my sister, actually, because they're going to talk to strangers online. I talk to strangers online, so it's hard to say don't do it. So what I've suggested with my sister is use a voice over IP number. This is actually a tip in the book, but to use a voice over IP number, something like Google Voice, Skype, I think WhatsApp has these kinds of numbers too. So that way, if you're going to take a conversation offline, which hopefully they're, talking to their parents about what kinds of conversations they're taking offline and all of that. But if they're going to give out the phone number, at least it's not a number that's linked to your entire life. At least it's an online number. If anything happens, if the person starts harassing them, if let's say they're using it on websites or whatever, and the website got breached and now all the information is public, whatever it is, it's a throwaway number. It's a burner. You could just quickly change it. The other thing is that a lot of teens like to FaceTime with their friends, right? That's the big thing. So they can also, this is something that I've been exploring recently, but you don't have to have a phone number to FaceTime. You can FaceTime just with an email address. So you can create, an email address that's like you're FaceTiming with stranger kinds of accounts, because my sister does this. And, we try to tell her, like, please only talk to people you really know from school, from work, from camp, people that you have met in real life. But she doesn't. They do these like for like or follow for follow or shout out for shout out on Snapchat, on Instagram, and all this stuff. And it's all
okay. You're outside of a lot of what this audience knows, but keep going.
it's basically saying like, hey, if you follow me, I'll follow you back because I want to get more followers. And so they'll call them different things, but those followers are not their real friends. They're concerned about that number, right? How many followers do I have? So they do these posts where they're like publicly trying to solicit people. But the people that they're soliciting are not real, it's like the lowest denominator of how to get a following. Mm-hmm. So anyways, and that's how they start talking to strangers.
Okay. So in your book, you give solutions for how kids can do these things without, like, you can still FaceTime, but you don't need to use your phone number because that's too much information. So that's great to know.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a few questions that are just practical. So, this one, we've always had a fire extinguisher in our house, but I don't know how to use it. And so you explain, like, you should go over with how to use it, because in the moment I shouldn't be reading directions. And I think the acronym is PASS.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us that.
So, what's interesting about that video is I was at the Fire Research Safety Institute. So they're the ones that train firefighters and all of that. And they taught me this acronym called PASS, which is where you pull the pin or push the button or whatever, it depends on usually it's pull the pin. And then you aim at the base of the fire. I didn't know that. I feel like I would just be aiming at the smoke or whatever. You aim at the base, and then you pull the lever or the button, whatever it is, and then you sweep. Squeeze the handle or lever, and then you sweep at the base of the fire. And yeah, I had asked that same question. I was never taught to use a fire extinguisher. How come? And they said that they used to do it in schools, but I guess because of liabilities and funding and all this stuff, they just kind of stopped.
Well, it's interesting because we've always had one, and yet we've never thought about, like, what if someone needs it? So the idea of like a 2-second conversation that prepares kids to know what to do should they have to grab it, which seems so obvious as I saw the TikTok.
And I also think if there ever is a fire and they're in the house, do they know how to? I would practice like getting from door to door with my eyes closed and like crawling too, because sometimes in a real fire the smoke is so thick you can't see, right? So how do you get around or get to safety if you need to? Which the safest thing, if you can't get out of the house, which is in my book, is to get into a room where you can close the door, because that door will keep the fire out for a bit longer. So it buys you time.
Okay. So this one is about teens and credit.
Oh,
and you suggest freezing their line of credit.
Yeah, even as an infant, like the second the child is born, because it's not something we think about very often, but there is, a group of cyber criminals that target kids and steal their identities, and you may not realize it for a year later. At best, you start getting the credit card solicitations to your home, and it's just a pain in the butt. An easy way to just not allow that to happen is to freeze their credit. You call Experian and these credit bureaus, and you just tell them to freeze it, and that's it.
And you can unfreeze it whenever you would
need
it.
Right. Yeah, you can first of all, I'm pretty sure it unfreezes automatically it might change depending on the agency, but every like 3 years, 5 years, something like that. So you kind of have to keep doing it, which is annoying. It'd be nice to just say, like, I want to freeze it. Do not unfreeze it until I call you back to unfreeze it. But what you do, like, because you could do it as an adult as well. So let's say you were filing, opening a credit card or buying a home or a car or something like that, where you need access to your credit. They just have a password. So you just call and give this special passphrase so that you can, it adds an extra step, but it doesn't block you from being able to do those things.
And if you're stupid like I was and you get suckered into a scam, you call and freeze your credit line. So
yeah. That's how I found out about it, actually, was because I found out someone had stolen my Social Security, and I was looking to fix it. And that's how I learned that.
Okay. So are there scams that particularly target teenagers?
Yeah. And they're all through social media. So mainly direct messages. And sometimes people will post, their pictures or whatever. And so the topics that they tend to talk about, these online social media scams that target teens, and it also, I guess, targets any user, but the teens are the ones that are more likely to fall for it. So it'll talk about here's an easy one. I created this list for you. I made this for you is one of the scams. I made this for you, and then they send a link. Now, of course, when you get that from your friend, you're like, oh, what did my friend make for me? What video, whatever. You click on it. It's going to ask you to sign in to your Instagram or whatever so that you can view the video. It looks like the real Instagram page. You don't know that it's fake. And then it ends up stealing your information. Now they've taken over your account. And the problem with this is that some kids, and this is very important to talk to our teens about, is that they should never store any kinds of sensitive photos on these apps. So sometimes, you might take a sexy photo with on your Instagram or on your Snapchat, and you don't post it publicly. You keep it in your private camera roll, your drafts, it's private. But if the account gets hacked, that hacker can make those images public. And that has happened to, middle schoolers, and it happened to a friend of mine at his child's middle school. So you want to make sure that, like, we do not own these apps. We love them, but we don't own them. Don't put anything private, personal like that, on these apps. And so I made this for you as one of them. There's another one of, you're on the top 10 ugly list at school, or you're on the top 10 most beautiful list at school. Here's the link, and it's the same thing. There's a lot of can you help me? I'm trying to be an influencer. Can you vote for me in this ambassador program? And it's a link, and it's, the same tactic.
So I've learned to check to see what the email is, because sometimes they're so good at copying the logo and it just looks so legit. But as soon as you click on that, you see that it's coming from someone you didn't know, something you don't trust.
Yeah, usually if it's coming through an email, usually that is the case, but sometimes they are sneaky. I have seen one, now this was for job hunters, but I saw one where the email looked real, the domain looked real, the company was real. The difference was they had one little dash in between the company, and that was what made it the fake thing. I mean, sometimes it's really hard to tell.
Okay, our favorite friend Jerry wants to know, when is it necessary to change one's password other than when there is actual fraud?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, a lot of the websites kind of prompt you to do this automatically. They'll have you. I think you don't have to change your passwords all the time. What's more important is to have a very good password, right? So not your dog's name and your birthday, but like a strong password. Because if I just guess your password like that, let me tell you, it's very easy to find out your dog's name if you've ever posted them on social media and your birthday. So anyway, so something that's strong, a passphrase, orange, basil, cookie dog, or something, like something long that you can remember. And then make sure that you have two-factor authentication on all of your accounts. That way, in case your password does get leaked, that there is a second form of a code that they need to get into the account. And then the other thing that I do is I monitor, this one's a little bit harder, but I monitor when there are data breaches and stuff like that. It's impossible to know all of them, but I'll get emails to my account. I have, Norton, so I get emails to my account through them that'll say, this parking app just got hacked, or this, what was the recent one? I think a hotel, was it Hyatt, or there was a big hotel chain that just got hacked and 19 million people had their information released. So, I get these emails, to my account. And so when I see that, I'll go check to see if I was, if my password was leaked. I think that's a paid service, but there is a website called Have I Been Pwned? And it's pwned, PWNED. So that's it. Anyways, and you could type in, an email address or phone number there and see if it's on the dark web. And that one's free.
Okay, maybe you can add that into the comments because I have no idea.
I know it's a weird
PW. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jerry, for your question. If anyone else has any, please put them in the chat and the comments. And okay, here's my last question for you, Kathy.
Yes.
Are there any things that we're worrying about that we don't need to worry about? And please tell us something.
Yes.
We worry about a lot.
I know. There's a lot of, they're like urban internet myths that kind of circulate through the internet, and it happens every year or so, every 3 years, something like that. And they're masked as this is for your safety, but they end up being completely false or unfounded. So an example of that, there was one urban or internet kind of thing going around telling you, 911 isn't the emergency number. If you're on the highway, call 211. And that's just not true. Obviously, in the United States, our emergency number is 911. In other countries, it's 211. And if you call 211 in the United States, because it's so common in other countries, a lot of phones will reroute you to 911. But that's just it's completely false. There's also a lot of scary ones out there that'll say, if you find a hanger on your car window, a t-shirt, a teddy bear, the letter F written into snow on your car, these kinds of things, it means somebody is going to kidnap you. Not the case. I mean, not to say it's never happened in the history of the world, but it's not something that police have ever said is happening. It's not something that's ever been linked to an uptick in crime. It's just, and then when you look into where these stories start, it's in Africa, this one, whatever, and it circulated the internet, or in London, this happened and it circulated. So those kinds of really scary, if you see this, it means this is going to happen to you. Those are all fake.
Okay, so where do you go? Do you go to Snopes? Where do you go to find out?
Yeah, Snopes is a good resource, but honestly, if you just type it into Google or whatever search engine you use, Bing or whatever, there's a million search engines, but Google's the most popular. If you just type it into there, you'll see the stories come up. Snopes is usually one of them, but you'll also find what I really like is actually the local news outlets who have actually asked, their police officers and their detectives and things like that, these questions. And I kind of use that to confirm what Snopes is saying. But Snopes is really good. Sometimes they can't get the definitive answer, though. And so that's when the local news is really helpful.
Kathy, thank you so much for your time. You want to bring your book forward so people can take a look at it?
This is it. I always wear a blue dress in my videos. So sorry, here. So that's why I'm in the blue dress.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for all this advice and for sharing it with us. And check you out just by your name on TikTok?
Yeah, if you just type in Kathy with a C on Instagram or on TikTok, I'm the first one that pops up. And I do share a lot of these tips on my page. It's a little hard to organize, right? It's not like looking through a book and being like, what's the cyber section? But I do share it on my page.
So buy the book first and then go to our TikTok page second. Thanks. Thanks for being here with us.